One love to the humble. One love to the humble. One love to the humble. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Listen, man. What your grandparents ate is not the same thing that's going on right now. It may be your grandparents or maybe it's your great-grandparents. But it ain't the same. Because, see, people like to say that, like, well, my grandparents ate this food. And they lived to be 100 years old. It ain't the same thing. It's not the same at all. By any sense of the means, it's not the same. See, what your grandparents ate, they, like, stuff they raised themselves. See, that was back in a culture that's very different from today. Because, see, today, people don't want to live like they lived in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, even the 1980s. Nobody wants to live like that anymore. Because, see, things have become modern to today's time, right? To match the fastness, the quickness, the instant. We like instant now. Remember the Jetsons? Maybe you don't. Maybe you didn't grow up watching the Jetsons, but I did. And what we're living in right now is the Jetson times. We just like the Jetsons was. Everything is instant. We like instant. We don't like what it takes to produce. The length of time that it takes to grow something. We don't want to do that. We want everything to happen right now. That's what we want. We want right now. But see, back then, they didn't think about right now because it wasn't instant. They understood something different culturally that we don't understand today. That's why we can't have what they had. That's why our health would never be as good as their health was. That's why our relationships would never be as good as their relationships was. That's why nothing will be what they had because mindset-wise, we're not the same as they were. You don't hear me though. Our mindset is not like their mindset was. Even though we try to act like it's everything the same. No, it's not the same. What we don't like, we say that's different. What we want to be the same, we say, oh, we just like them. No, we're not. See, when they ate pork back then, it was pork from the pigs that they raised. They raised their pork in their backyard. They had pig pens. They had pig pens in their backyard. It was the pork they raised, not processed. It was the stuff they raised in their yard. The chickens they ate was the chickens they grew and raised in their yard. It wasn't the processed chicken going to the plant, getting processed in the plant, pushed out, get injected with all these hormones and all this stuff that can grow fast. No. It wasn't that type of stuff going on back then. In the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even in the 80s. It wasn't happening. Even in the 90s. People were still raising their own stuff. They grew their own vegetables. They raised their own hogs, pork. They raised cows in their yards. Maybe not cows so much. Everybody had cows, but everybody had pigs back then. Everybody raised chickens back then, at least. And then we say, well, I can eat the same thing today because my grandparents ate it and they lived that age. No, it was not like that. Look. Things going on today was not what was going on back then. It wasn't the same at all. And I hate it for the new generation because they don't understand that. They think like these restaurants, all this processed foods, and just going to the grocery store and buying all this stuff, is like they think like that's how it's always been. It has not always been that way. This is new. This is a new phenomenon. But you can't tell them that because they don't listen. They think they know it all. And they wonder why like the youth today are overweight. The youth today are developing cancers early. The youth today are developing mental disorders early. The youth today are experiencing things that has never been experienced before. What is wrong with black people? What is wrong with black people today? They don't listen and they do not care. You can't tell them nothing. Now, you can never tell a teenager anything, no matter what their era. But even if you couldn't tell them nothing, they understood that certain things was going to make them great. And they followed that. But today, we've been pulled away from the good things that used to keep us in order in the black community. We don't care no more. You can't tell a black person anything today and they're going to listen, especially if it's a person older than them. They don't want to hear what the elders got to say anymore. And that's the only thing going to save them. That's where the knowledge is. The elders are the library that they don't want to go into and listen to. See, when we was growing up, I was born, I'm from the, I was born in the 70s, the late 70s, close to the 80s, but I was born in the late 70s. And I had no guidance. Not because I didn't want it. I wanted guidance, but I ain't have none. My mother died when I was 6 years old, man. 6. My dad was in the, my dad was doing whatever he was doing. I went to foster care. Not like the foster care today. It wasn't like it is today back then. It wasn't like, it wasn't no CPS back in those times like it is now. But I went to stay with some people that I didn't even know. I still to this day don't even know how the world that was even hooked up. I don't even know how the people even connected with. I don't know how that even worked. But that's what me and my sister ended up at. And I can go into many stories about my own situation. But I'm trying to tell y'all, what we live in today is different. We don't care about our health. Go look at the stats. You don't got to ask me. Go look at the health stats of black people today. Just go do a light Google search. And you're going to see that black people are suffering today from health issues more than anyone else. We lead the way in heart disease. We lead the way in heart attacks. We lead the way in cardiovascular problems. We lead the way in all diabetes. We lead the way. Why do we lead the way? Because of what we eat. We don't grow our own foods. And I'm not saying like they intentionally trying to hurt us. That's not what I'm saying. They're going to make, the corporation's going to make their money. But what I'm saying is they got to do things a certain kind of way to ensure, that there's food out there. And we're not the only ones buying it. Everybody's buying it. But I'm specifically talking about us. Because check this out. We lead the way in all the health issues. Black people leading the way. Why are we leading the way? Is something going on with the food that's affecting us? Nobody's suffering like we are when it comes to health. Nobody is going through what we are going to health. Look at it. Go to the CDC and look up heart disease. Look at all the diseases and see who is top ranked. We're top ranked in things that we shouldn't be. Go look it up. We leading the way. We leading the way. Why am I saying this? I'm the same person. I'm you right now. I used to have high blood pressure. I used to have high sugar levels. I used to have high cholesterol. I'm you. And you know what makes it so funny? I'm you, but I grew up. I ain't grew up eating fast food. fast food was a treat. Like, back in my time, I was born in the 70s. So I was like, grew up in the 80s, 90s. But fast food wasn't like it was today back then. You know what I'm saying? Back then, fast food was like a treat. Something your parents got you on like Friday night, they got a check. They might get you some fast food. You might get like a meal, depending upon the money. And then on Saturday, Friday, you might get a double cheeseburger for fries and a drink. And then on Saturday night, you might get a pizza. But fast food was not the everyday routine back then. Because restaurants, it wasn't looked at like we look at today. It's been promoted to us today so much that it's like a meal. But I'm telling you, from a person who grew up in a different era, it was not like that back then. That was not the way things were done back then. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't that way. I'm serious, man. I grew up. My granddad had at his house, he had a garden. So he had everything in the garden. I'm talking about a garden. I can't even explain the length that it was because I don't even know it at the time. I didn't think nothing of it. It was just normal. It was nothing. I'm like, let me calculate this. Let me look at it like this. It wasn't like that. I just was. This is how it was. It was a garden, and everything was out there. I was young, but I used to go out there with him and do it. My granddad was worked at a place that my granddad was a farmer basically, so that's what he did. That was his job. He worked somewhere that did that. You know what I'm saying? He used to bring a tractor home and drive it. My granddad also take a shotgun to work. This is back in the day. Take a shotgun to work and shoot rabbits. When the rabbit pop out, boom, shoot a rabbit, bring a rabbit home, clean it, cook it. We used to eat rabbit. We used to eat squirrel. That was how we grew up. That's how I grew up. I grew up with, my granddad had a pig pen. He had chickens. He had all that. That's how I grew up. That's what I grew up doing. I do the same thing. Now, I ain't got no chickens yet. I don't have no cows or nothing like that. I don't got no pigs. But what I'm trying to explain is, I know I went on a tangent. I'm sorry. But the point I'm making is, I got my own garden. I grow food. I grow my vegetables and things like that in my garden. I ain't been able to live nowhere yet where I can grow my own hogs and my own chickens yet. But I'm gonna do that too. But my point is, you can't equate what you eating out here at these restaurants and these grocery stores today to what they was eating back then to live to be that age they live to be. You ain't gonna be able to do that. Because it's so much processed. Everything processed. Everything got stuff in it today that wasn't in the foods back then. So when you try to make that comparison, it's unfair comparison. And you're fooling yourself to believe that you're going to be able to do what they did. You're not going to be able to do that. Your health is not going to be like this. I go to the doctor every 6 months. Every 6 months I'm in the doctor's office. Every 6 months. If you ain't going in that doctor's office every 6 months and you ain't seeing where you at, you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm telling you right now, you may not can get your own hogs, you may not can grow your own chickens, but you can grow your own vegetables. That's the least you can do for yourself. The least. Go look at them stats. If you think I'm just talking, go look at them stats up and see where we really stand in them stats. See where we really at. See what's really going on in our community. Them stats don't lie. The CDC got the stats. Because people go to the hospital and they ask you what your race is. And you put it down, the condition. It get reported. They're not lying to you. And you probably don't even know. But you need to go look. Your grandparents lived to that age because it was not like it is today. They wasn't eating what you eat today. They worked. They worked outside. They was out there working. They wasn't sitting down at a desk like we doing today. They was working. They was physically working. That's all I got to say about this. Get it together or just suffer. Take care.